Hi everyone, in this video I will talk about designing rubrics. First, a note about pronunciation. This word does not have a schwa, so we say rubric, not rubric. It's always rubric. So once we have made this clarification, we can go on. So what is a rubric? It is a double entry chart that includes aspects and criteria to assess students' learning. A rubric can be used in formative, summative, peer, self-assessment, etc. So how do I design a rubric? By taking learning objectives, cognitive, affective, or psychomotor into consideration to identify the expected outcome after instruction. By identifying the characteristics of this outcome. By formulating the attributes, criteria, and the rating scale for this outcome. So basically, you need to think of what you want your students to do. For example, if you want them to write a paragraph, what should the paragraph have to be considered a good piece of writing? If you want your students to give an oral presentation, which aspects are you interested in for students to deliver a good oral presentation? Well, that's basically what you need to describe in a rubric. So, simply put, a rubric should have attributes. These are the observable aspects that will be paid the most attention when assessing a learning outcome. Ideally, no more than 5, but this isn't written in stone. If you need more than 5, it's fine. Criteria: a description of the quality with which each of the attributes is to be accomplished. And the rating scale: a scale that assigns a different rating to the established criteria for an attribute. So we'll see an example. This is just a fragment of a whole rubric. So we'll signal these basic elements. So this is an attribute. So you see there are 2 others. That's a criterion. See, each piece of writing inside each of the blocks in the table is a criterion. And you have the rating, or the rating scale. Now, there are 2 main types of rubrics: holistic or global rubrics and analytical rubrics. So, what do holistic or global rubrics look like? Okay, this type of rubric is meant to assess students' learning outcomes as a totality. So this is a holistic or global rubric. See, it only has 6 levels. So when you use this rubric, you only mark one of these numbers, and that's the grade students get. If you look at the descriptions, they basically contain the same elements, but they use different words to describe the degree of performance in each of the levels. Now there are analytical rubrics. These are more common. So this type of rubric allows teachers and students to carry out a deeper analysis of the degree of quality to which each of the attributes was achieved. So this is an example of an analytical rubric. So you see, you have the attributes or the aspects. We have 4 performance levels, and each performance level has a criterion that describes this performance. Still, there are ways of combining the best of both types of rubrics. So I call them hybrid rubrics. So they combine holistic and analytical features. We'll see an example. So this rubric has both analytical and holistic elements. If you see, there is a range of 10 points in each of the performance levels. So for example, 60 would be the highest grade, but a student could get 59, 58, and so. So it will be according to your own perception as an evaluator to assign the grade. If you see, okay, I see 10 is difficult to handle, so you could insert a mini scale inside each of these performance bands, and you're combining both an analytical and a holistic rubric. Okay, there are some last comments on rating scales. So rating scales can be graphic, that means they include words, so they are mostly intended for formative assessment. Numerical, so they only include numbers, mostly for summative assessment. Or descriptive, a combination of words and numbers. And we have an important note here. If you use words, it is advisable not to use words that have negative connotations. For example, mediocre, I have seen many times the word poor being used in a rubric. And think of you as a student getting a rubric marked as poor. The feedback given on a rubric should allow students to reflect on their performance in order to improve the next time they do something similar. So try to avoid words that are discouraging or that have this negative connotation. So here are examples of rating scales: numerical, graphic, and descriptive. There's something else I would like to point out about this one. See that it has an odd number, 5 levels. Some people recommend having an even number in the scale. So instead of 5, having 4 or perhaps 6. Why is that? Because they create a middle. So 3 good or 3 and good. And sometimes you as a teacher start marking the middle a little too often, and it doesn't allow you to see where to place your students on the continuum. So we have a side that is the high achieving end and another side that is the low achieving end. And you see, okay, I have 2 students and I mark 3, but I'm sure they are not in the same performance level. So if you use 4 instead of 5, then you're forced to make a clearer decision. So where is the student? Is it more oriented towards the high achieving end or towards the low achieving end? So instead of working with an odd numbered scale, working with an even numbered scale may make your job as a teacher a little bit easier. And we have references in case you want to get further information.